immerse themselves in a learning experience, obviously focused around the Sikh faith, culture, and history, but the learning experience goes above and beyond just the confines of our Sikh faith. It's learning from each other. This Infinite Wisdom Day is a significant one. We're gathered today in the backdrop of the heart-wrenching events that took place in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, on August 5th last. Even that we have turned into a learning event. And when we usually go downtown to San Antonio to get them out of this immersed, very intense learning experience, we take them out for a day or an evening out at the Riverwalk. We actually attended a interfaith service in memory of those that passed away during those events, and the brave blessings for the family and the brave ones who were able to counter that hate at that instant, at that time. And then we went even further, and we did go to the Riverwalk, but we made it a Sikh awareness trail. And some of our participants and students, it was a life-changing experience for them. Because I always say, if we need to teach something, that is the best way to learn as well. And what we were doing that day was we were trying to share the Sikh values with others, and it just turned into a learning day. Infinite Wisdom Day, and our topic was planned prior to those events, and we chose to actually keep this topic, what we had chosen earlier. And there was a reason for that, and I think it made sense, because the dialogue and narrative as a result of those events on August 5th has to do with hate and senseless violence. But the undercurrent of all of that is fear, and it's a fear of the us versus them. It's a fear of the that versus the other, the quote-unquote other idea. And this is a similar narrative of the haves and the have-nots, and these other topics that we're going to be discussing today as well. Regardless, it is our responsibility, now more than ever before, to just go beyond narratives and discussions and dialogues and change that into action. So this darkness of fear and ignorance, we believe, can only be eradicated with the light of knowledge and sharing and wisdom, and not just, once again, in either the academia or media, but all echelons of life. Kind of like, the 99% has to work on this. This idea of knowledge sharing so we as Sikhs, all of us gathered here today, I'm sure have that hope within us that this is going to happen in earnest, and that knowledge sharing is actually going to turn into action. So today's topic is going to be the interplay of faith, economics, and politics. There'll be a panel discussion which will consider the implications of the global economic situation on the role of faith in charity and community work, the use of the pulpit during a presidential election year, and the techniques of faith-based mobilization and activism, especially in light of the global Occupy movements. That's what our esteemed panelists were given directions to create their narrative around that. Before I start off our proceedings, we wanted to do a couple of things first. And one is to start off, rather than a moment of silence, etc., the Sikh way of commemorating significant events is through our mode of music and singing. And this will be what's called a shabad from our Guru Granth Sahib. It'll be sung in the traditional Gurmat Sangeet method. So a couple of our Siddhakars, this project called Siddhak, we lovingly call the participants Siddhakars, they will lead us in this singing. The translation, etc., what they're singing is up there. We ask that all of you, if you cannot sing or understand, at least join in on the harmony that we're going to be sharing right now. So without further ado, Resham Singh and Ajmeet Singh, please go ahead.
Can everyone hear me? Yep. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. बिसर गए सब तात पराई बिसर गए सब तात पराई बिसर गए सब तात पराई जब ते साध संगत मोहे पाई जब ते साध संगत मोहे पाई बिसर गए सब तात पराई ना को बैरी नहीं बेगाना ना को बैरी नहीं बेगाना सगल संग हमको बड़े आई सगल संग हमको बड़े आई बिसर गए सब तात पराई बिसर गए सब तात पराई जो पाप कीनो सो पाल माणियो जो पाप कीनो सो पाल माणियो सुमत साधु ते पाई सुमत साधु ते पाई बिसर गए सब तात पराई बिसर गए सब तात पराई सब में राव रहया प्रभ एक सब में राव रहया प्रभ एक पेख पेख नानक बेग साई बेग बेग नानक बेग साई बिसर गए सब तात पराई बिसर गए सब तात पराई जब ते साध संगत मोहे पाई जब ते सादर संगत मोहे पाई बिसर गए सब तात पराई बिसर गए सब तात पराई बिसर गए सब। वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी।
So as we're clearing out, I do want to start off with a few thank yous. And the first thank you, of course, is to our Sikh Research Institute team. We, this year, would be remiss to not utilize the technologies that exist today. And the whole session today, all of the panelists and their talk and what we just witnessed is being streamed live. And if you go to our webpage, you will be seeing the proceedings. And that was, our team. One of the members I want to mention is who was holding the camera and readjusting it is Sarah Strew, responsible for all of our outreach, marketing, communication type of programs. Varinder Kaur, she is our office manager. Probably you have those panelists for sure, and even the general invitations were gone through her. And Jasmine Kaur, our director of education, whose flagship program this is. I'll be mentioning others as we go along, but wanted to thank our Sikri team and the Siddhikars and the participants who also helped in preparing all of this. Another thank you has to go out to the Concept Therapy Institute, which is the venue in which we hold our Siddhik program. Has been multiple years, as I said, and the Infinite Wisdom Day, and especially the Concept Therapy Institute. A lot of our participants themselves ask and want to know what CTI is about. They have been gracious to help us in the setup and open up the whole campus, whatever we want to call that, to be honest, but the whole campus to the public. So we're really grateful for that. I mean, this is an event which is very near and dear to us, and we want to open it up to the community, and they have allowed us to do that. So to explain a little bit about the CTI, I would like to welcome Kate Moore to the stage, who can give us a brief introduction about the Concept Therapy Institute.
I'll just hold it. Thank you. Hello and welcome. I'm Kate Moore. I'm the Outreach Coordinator for the Concept Therapy Institute. And I just wanted to tell you very briefly a tiny little bit about concept therapy and about the ranch, as we call it. It is a campus, but it used to be a ranch. And the beautiful thing about concept therapy is it is a philosophy, not a religion, not anything like that. It's a philosophy that allows people to learn to access these concepts. We all see life from our own concepts, as we will be talking about tonight, I'm sure. And it allows us to find those concepts for us that are limiting, that are false very often, that create dis-ease or discord in our lives, and eliminate those, replace them with more positive concepts, helpful and beneficial concepts. We also teach what we call the laws of life. We teach that life does flow, does operate in an exact way. And this is very important. I'm guessing this is something else that we'll be talking about tonight. There are laws of life that if we live in harmony with them, life flows very easily for us, or more easily. And if we flow against them or try to work against them, life seems a bit distracting, it seems a bit tense, it's difficult. We do find that our religion, that our philosophy works with quite a lot of religions very well. We've got people from many different religions who are members of our organization. And I think the fundamental reason is because we don't tell anyone how to see God. That is for your religious dogma, but it is a structure within which your religion can be enhanced or made clearer to you, as we get comments from many of our people saying just that from all different religions. You may have noticed the name of the ranch as you came in, Om Sat Tat, and I wanted to share with you that that comes from Sanskrit. And to the best of our founders' imagination, that means, and our founder is Dr. Thurman Fleet, and one of the books that he always loved was the Hindu text, the Bhagavad Gita. And so his interpretation is Om meaning the first cause or the beginning, which is the basis of our study. Sat, which is dedication to the Supreme, and then Tat for those seeking immortality. Obviously not of the physical form, but an awareness that we are something more than this lump of clay here. Now, originally Om Sat Tat was designed to be a clinic for people who came to be healed and also to be educated in these laws of life and in their concepts, their own limiting concepts. But now it's, you can see it's a residential area also, but it is an educational facility for people to come and learn more about themselves, about the universe, and about each other, and living amongst one another happily. So I do think that addresses what we're talking about tonight, and I think it's why we've had such a wonderful relationship with the Sikh community for so many years. If you've got questions, please come see us after the event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kate. So we're going to now start our interfaith dialogue, but prior to doing so, there are some chairs up front. So if I can ask either our civic participants or anyone else who, if they don't mind, to come up and fill in the seats in front so that those that may come in later can easily come and sit in the back and not have to disturb the proceedings. So we can actually force our civicers to do so, but if anyone else wants to do, that's okay. Okay, and thank you very much for that. Welcome our esteemed panelists. We're going to be discussing an interplay of faith, economics, and politics. I will be just essentially a moderator when it comes to introducing you. Each one of you, we will start from my right, going all the way left. I will announce your name and a brief introduction as you have provided to us, because we do not really want to confine your time that we've already done. So we are going to, because of the time frame that we have allotted, a maximum of 8 minutes will be allotted for you to share your views and thoughts on this topic. Question and answers related will take place towards the end. Harinder Singh, our Chief Programming Officer, will make some concluding remarks and open the floor to questions. I request our esteemed panelists to really focus and talk around the topic at hand. What I would encourage is that after the event, if the audience or others have questions about fundamentals and ideas about the faith itself, we do that later, and getting a dynamic and interesting dialogue going about the topic at hand, obviously based on your backgrounds and faiths, is what we want to really encourage today. So without further ado, if I may ask Ms. Barbie Gorelick to come up. And Barbie has co-founded the Tri-Faith Dialogue of San Antonio in 1999. She's on the board of the Soul Center and serves on the core team of the Peace Center of San Antonio and the Interreligious Council. She's a recipient of the San Antonio Bar Foundation Peacemaker of the Year Award and the Mind Science Foundation Imagineer Award. She's also a member of Temple Bethel, where the interfaith service was held recently, and recently retired as a full-time teacher at the Circle School. Probably we have the option to put it on or just hold it. It's up to you.
Okay.
Okay, if that's okay, and then you can just. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I come with the traditional Jewish Hebrew greeting, Shalom, Shalom Aleichem. And The word shalom, many of you may know, is usually translated as peace. And actually the word shalom comes from a root word, salem, which means whole. And so in my faith tradition of Judaism, when we talk about shalom, we are talking about more than just the ending of warfare, but a condition where both sides are made whole. Until both sides are made whole, we do not have shalom. I would like to begin with a prayer that we say to mark special occasions. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehekianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu la'azman hazed. Amen. Praised are you, Lord our God, ruling spirit of the cosmos, the one who creates all life, sustains life, and has brought us together at this moment. So it is my pleasure and honor to be here. I thank you for inviting me, and I have been a great admirer of the Sikh faith, and many of your prayers are so beautiful. I always enjoy your part at the MLK service every year. Judaism is a monotheistic faith and the oldest of the three Abrahamic faiths of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. All of these faiths trace their heritage back to the character of Abraham. Of course, for our Muslim friends, his name is pronounced in Arabic Ibrahim, but it's the same person. And he's mentioned in their holy book, the Quran. Central to Judaism is the belief in one God and the Torah. The Torah is God's teaching and guidebook for the Jewish people. The Torah is made up of 5 books, and it's the same 5 books that begin both Hebrew scriptures, or the Hebrew Bible, and the Christian Bible. You may have heard of them. They are Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. There are 2 other sections of the Hebrew Bible, the prophets and the writings. And together the whole Hebrew Bible is called the Tanakh, which is an acronym for the names of these 3 sections in Hebrew. Now the Torah clearly states that there is only one God and that all humans are created B'Tselem Elohim, which is in the image of God. God is believed to be indefinable, omnipotent, omnipresent, incorporeal, and the ultimate creator and source of all that there is. So, although God can never be fully described, there is one thing in the Torah that the Torah hints at to give us an inkling of what God is like, and that is humankind. Every human on earth, regardless of color, faith, creed, innate gifts, or challenges, every person is in the image of God and therefore equal and unique in the eyes of God. The Torah tells us both to love your neighbor as yourself and to love the stranger in your midst. Do not wrong him or oppress him, but to treat him as one of your very own citizens, because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. It may be more reasonable to expect us to love our neighbors since we have an investment in our immediate community and neighborhood. But to love the stranger, that is a taller task, to be sure. In ancient times, the Israelites were told to harvest their fields in a certain way. They were to leave the corners of their fields unharvested, and any crops that fell on the ground during the picking were to also be left as is. This was food for the stranger, the widow, and the poor. Time and time again, our scriptures remind us that we were once slaves and strangers, and therefore we know the value and right of freedom and dignity for all people. Jews have the obligation to sustain not only fellow Jews, but non-Jews, to visit the sick regardless of who they are, and to bury the dead of all people for the sake of peace. Jews are obligated to be the voice of the downtrodden and the politically depressed wherever they dwell, to help raise up the disenfranchised and the poor in our neighborhood and across the planet. We are obligated to help heal the sick and free the captive where they are found, always pursuing justice and peace. Judaism is a faith that is much more than a belief system in God and practitioners of rituals. Judaism is a lifestyle and a peoplehood that recognizes they are part of the wider peoplehood. They are part of the wider peoplehood of humanity. We are founded on values of behavior, the obligation of action and deeds whenever there is a human condition that reveals suffering. This is what is expected of what we call a tzedek, a righteous person. In Hebrew, there is no word for charity. The closest word to charity is the word tzedakah, which comes from the root meaning righteous. Charity is an obligation of the righteous. If you are a righteous Jew, it's what you do. As Jews, we look to God as our example, and we are shown in the Torah that God hears and responds to the suffering of all people, not just Jews or Israelites. As the image of God on earth, we too need to watch and listen for the suffering from all of our brothers and sisters on earth. We are obligated to act swiftly, to ease suffering, and to help rebuild and repair the world. This is an important value in Judaism, tikkun olam, repairing the planet. Whether the ruins of a hurricane, victims of oppression, or the hole in the ozone, Jews are commanded to aid quickly in all ways they can. Many social action efforts take Jews to serve in far-off places and different countries. We bear witness to all sorts of atrocities taking place in sister lands, continents away from where we might live. Modern technology has taken us right into the villages, looking right into the eyes of starving children and fleeing refugees. The need is often enormous, and we might feel hopeless to effect great progress in our day. But the Jewish tradition is very clear in the words of Pirkei Avot, the sayings of the fathers from the Talmud. It is not necessary for you to complete the work, but neither are you free to desist from it, and that to save a life is as though you have saved the entire world. It was in this spirit that my temple, Temple Bethel, opened its doors to the Sikh community and our fellow San Antonians in the aftermath of the horrific tragedy in Wisconsin. We mourned with you because we too were once the stranger, and we know the heart of the stranger, having been strangers in the land of Egypt. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbie. I would like to request Tom Keenan come up to the stage. Tom Keen is a retired professor of religious studies at Our Lady of the Lake University. He served as a founding member of the Justice and Peace Commission of the Catholic Archdiocese of San Antonio. He is a published poet. His latest book is titled Flowers for Lovemakers, Peace Builders, and God Searchers. We welcome Tom to the stage to share his thoughts.
Thank you. Tonight, as we consider the global economic situation and the role of faith in politics and economic justice, we want to explore our common concern for living a faith that is active and relevant to our faith-filled understanding of what God is about and what the human family is about. Let us examine this concern on two levels. The personal level for us as individuals, and the collective level, the communal level, for us as a society, a people of one city, one state, one nation, one global family on this one beautiful and endangered planet. On the personal level, as a follower of Jesus, I try to center my personal relationships on a story Jesus told, where all nations assemble to hear God's judgment. The king will say, "Come, inherit the kingdom which was prepared for you. For I was hungry, and you gave me to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. I was sick, you visited me. I was in prison, you came to me." The people will ask, "When did we see you and do these things?" The king will say, "When you did these things to anyone in need, especially the least of my family, you did it to me." It seems to me that the story calls me personally to be generous to everyone with my time, energy, and resources for the good of all. That I can do personally. On the collective level, where I have to work with others, I recall the prayer Jesus taught his followers. "Father, your will be done, here on earth as it is already done in heaven." So I ask myself, what is God's will for us? The answer comes in the next sentence. "Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive those indebted to us." So I ask, what does that mean? That if we do God's will, really, no child on earth will lack for daily bread? That if we do God's will, we would never have an economic system that drives people into debt just to feed, shelter, clothe, and care for their children? That a system that forces families into the streets because some Wall Street financiers got greedy is not God's will? When the system is not working equally for all, is God calling us in our freedom and love for all to change the system? If we cannot bring change individually, must we do it collectively? For the collective level, I must turn also to another story. This one from our own time. In 1964, the democratic government of Brazil was overthrown by a military coup supported by the U.S. Department of State. As a result, Indian populations were driven from their lands to make room for corporate expansion, and soon people were starving. One bishop, Dom Helder Camaro of Recife, had his priests and nuns feeding the hungry. Not just that, but helping them organize so they could help themselves. The military began arresting, torturing, and killing his people. The bishop himself was driven into exile. He toured the world telling of the plight of his people. He explained, "When I fed the poor, they called me a saint. When I asked why people were hungry, they called me a communist." What the bishop really asked was, is our collective system the problem? In these cases, multiplied by thousands all over the world, we see systems of collective injustice that can only be addressed systemically and collectively by many acting together in the vision of justice for all, to which we feel God's call. Our times are ripe for such foundational change. In this past year, spontaneous Occupy movements have sprung up worldwide. Everywhere, people are waking up to the fact that the global and national economic systems work very well for the 1%, but not for the rest of us. By the way, I have outlined some thoughts on how the Occupy movements, and all of us too, can maintain and deepen our efforts for meaningful change. I have some copies here at my seat for those of us interested. It may be helpful to understand how seeds of awareness grow into movements for meaningful change. It happens by building to a critical mass whereby everyone gets on board with a new way of looking at reality. Just one example is the abolition of slavery, an institution 10,000 years old, banished in less than a century. Such movements for humanizing change begin with the realization that each of us is more than our ego. As Mr. G.P. Singh of the Sikh community wrote recently in the Express News, Sikh identity, quote, encourages us not only to be accountable to our faith, but to our fellow human beings. In conclusion, I share with us a prayer that echoes Mr. Singh's thoughts. It is attributed to a 13th century Italian monk called Francis of Assisi. It reflects what is possible with God's help on both a personal level and a collective level, leading to a renewal of life on this planet. God, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me scatter the seeds of your love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Creator, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. It is dying to self and to our own little egos that we are born to eternal life. God bless us all.
Thank you, Tom. Our next contributor speaker is Lopita Nath, if I can ask her to come up to the stage. Lopita Nath is an associate professor of history at the University of the Incarnate Word and the coordinator of the Asian Studies program. She serves as the leader of the President's Interfaith and Community Service Campus Challenge, representing the Incarnate Word, where she focuses on helping with the refugee resettlement program in collaboration with the Catholic Charities. We welcome Lopita to share her thoughts.
Just hold this?
Yeah, you want to put it on?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Namaskar. I don't know, I'm sure some of you are aware that today is India's Independence Day. So happy Independence Day to you all. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is yesterday I received a message from a friend in Pakistan wishing me happy Independence Day. It really brought tears to my eyes because, I wished her back and I told her that it took us 65 years to get to this point where you can wish me and I can wish you back. And I think it's really fitting that I'm here today at this, at this function to present this, because I think it's really very ironical that, speaking as a Hindu, the one thing that really touches us always is that the foundations of Hindu civilization lay across the border of India, at the, on the banks of the Indus River, which is in Pakistan. And when India became independent, I guess that was one of the issues because, Pakistan was a very infant, very new nation. And the biggest burden that Pakistan had to bear was to take on this responsibility of a 3,000-year-old civilization. And as Inderpreet Singh mentioned, is that I'm in charge. I'm leading this President Obama's campaign or challenge, which is known as the Interfaith and Community Service Campus Challenge. And this is an outreach to universities and campuses of higher education all over the United States to promote interfaith dialogue and community service. And the main focus on this is to turn US's diversity into its strength. That was the main idea. And the college campuses are becoming this main focus because the students are the future of the country. and any investment that we make on them will reap the benefits of the future and take it outside to the community. And one of the things that I really love about this program is that it's very, very inclusive. You know, it includes everyone, and it allows me to speak and create this understanding for the faith. And it comes across as, you know, this was a funny incident. Last spring, I was at a Compassion conference, and one of my colleagues who was there told me that when I stood up to speak from the perspective of Hinduism, she turned, one of her neighbors sitting next to her turned around and said, "I didn't know Hinduism was a religion." And so this friend of mine who's a very esteemed colleague and very knowledgeable, and she just turned around and stared at this person because she was surprised. And later she told me that, you know, can you believe it? And it is true, you know, it is true that over the years, I guess for the last 10 years, I know this has been really good that you know, the US has been, out of fear, out of a paranoia, has been totally involved in trying to understand Islam. And in the process, I guess Hinduism has kind of waned away. And I guess this is an opportunity for us to kind of create that kind of an understanding. So today, all I would like to do, I know that we are constricted with time, would try to talk about a few basic points about the economics of Hinduism and how it makes community service an integral part of the life of the Hindus. And I'm sure you must have heard of this. Every day you hear this, that Hinduism is more of a philosophy. It's an important part of the, you know, everyday existence of every Hindu. But what does it actually mean? You know, we know that. And to put it simply, it is just the life of an ordinary Hindu person. The way a person teaches. I'm not a religious guru. I'm not, you know, I'm an ordinary practitioner of Hinduism. I'm a practicing Hindu. And one of the best things I like about Hinduism is that although its philosophy is really deep and intricate, but its practice is very simple. And you can become a Hindu without converting to Hinduism. All you have to do is follow a life of compassion, respect others, respect other people's religions, respect your family, believe in, you know, all the good things, love animals, practice forgiveness, above revenge. You are a Hindu. You know, it makes it very simple. You know, you don't have to, you know, like I tell my students, you don't have to go to church. I'm lucky, I don't have to go to a temple or every Sunday wake up in the morning and be at church, you know. I can go whenever I want to. And if not, I just sit at home and pray. And I think it makes it really, really wonderful. So, I know. And so as I said, that there are, you know, the historical basis of Hinduism in the Indus Valley civilization actually provided the economics of Hinduism. This was an urban civilization 3,000 years ago, contemporary to Mesopotamia and the Sumerian civilizations. And it was very, very urbanized, based on, you know, guilds and trade, creating a successful occupational structure, promoted economic development and diversity. And these are the features that have continued to our present day. You know, and that is why we see that Hinduism has had this lasting impact. You know, it has become a part of our lives. It has continued to this present day. And as mentioned by a Hindu philosopher, I quote, Hindu economics is fundamentally different from Western economics. Within Hinduism, economics falls under Artha, one of the 4 legitimate aims of life. Dharma, righteousness, Artha, wealth, Kama, pleasure, and Moksha, liberation. And as opposed to that, his comment was that in Western economics, human beings are regarded as the agents for carrying out economic activities, producing goods, and in turn consuming goods to complete that cycle. And So engaging in economic activity is a part of their religion because of the 4 duties, and it's also a part of the duty of every Hindu. So, you know, as at the heart of, you know, every Hindu economics is that the test of every policy is not profit, employment, or growth, but how it strengthens family and community, individual character, and sensitivity. And this is, you know, stated by Professor Ramesh Dewan from Polytechnic University in New York. And it's very, very practical because it touches every aspect of life. You know, every Hindu is asked, you know, you do not accumulate wealth, you do not hoard wealth, you collect wealth, you know, you work for wealth. That is a part of your duty. So wealth and, you know, working for wealth is a part of your duty in life, as is pleasure, as is attaining liberation or moksha, as is your dharma or following righteousness. Now, 2 of the important things which is a very self-strengthening part of Hinduism, and I won't go into lots of details. And one of that is the caste system, which people, you know, there have been a lot of, you know, different opinions about that, but it was initially came down all the way from the Indus civilization, and it is a, you know, an economic system. It's a principle of the division of labor, apprentice training, and ensured that every person became a master in his own vocation. The same thing, another important aspect of this was to attain self-sufficiency. So within a village, if you had every community working, you know, in a different profession, you achieved a kind of self-sufficiency. The other very important part of Hinduism was the joint family system, which I know we miss so much here, but it was, you know, in a joint family system, you know, it kind of is a collaborative effort where you're pooling resources, collaborating talent, training, inducting younger members, and thus creating a family structure which can lead to profit or which can lead to some kind of an economic activity. And I'm sure all of you are familiar with that. And so out of this, one of the things, just one conclusion, is that this idea of social responsibility and caring, which begins in the joint family system, kind of, you know, crosses over into the community. So dana, which is basically giving, whether material or immaterial, is a very important part of the philosophy of every Hindu's life. And it was really interesting because I was asking, you know, one of my friends back home, and I said, you know, tell me something about what social service Hindu people do. I'm from Assam in Guwahati, you know, which is far away from Punjab or from North India. It's in Northeast. And, you know, this friend of mine said, well, you know, all I can tell you is that the Gurudwaras here are really, really helping people everywhere. You know, so you see that, you know, this kind of social service, for instance, the concept of the ashram, you know, that is an area where every kind of charitable work extended to everyone. So I guess it becomes a part of what we do and who we are and how we do it. And I think there has been a movement to try and globalize this concept and make it much more of a wider factor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lopita, for the very passionate and colorful sharing of thoughts. I do want to ask our panelists to try and keep within the allotted 8 minutes of time. There are many others we still have to go through, but I understand the passion that all of our esteemed panelists do bring. So our next speaker will be Mr. Jim Parker, if I can ask him to come towards the stage. He is the president of the Free Thinkers Association of Central Texas, also known as FACT, an organization that's comprised of atheists, agnostics, skeptics, humanists, and other free thinkers. He is also the coordinator of the San Antonio Coalition of Reason, He holds a business degree, is a veteran of the Army, and has always made volunteering a central part of his life. Jim Parker, we welcome you to the stage to share your thoughts.
Thank you very much. And we will try to keep this as brief as we can so we can move on. We certainly want to keep time for questions. I try to keep in the United States and in Christianity as far as our target audience, if you will, only because that's the area that I know the best. Religion is often used to justify the actions and positions that people take on certain issues. For instance, a terrorist may well feel that his actions are being done in accordance of the wishes of his or her God. On the other hand, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Likewise, when a politician takes a stand on the Occupy movement, he or she often uses religion to support his or her stance. For instance, the one percenters, as they're called, might use the parable of the talents in Matthew and Luke to make their case. And I'll paraphrase that. In that parable, Jesus refers to a master who praises men who were able to take talents or money that were given to them and double the money. But another man who was given 1 talent buried the money because he didn't want to risk losing it. His master was upset, calling him a wicked, lazy servant. And the master said, "You should have at least put my money on deposit with the bankers so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest." I would have received it back with interest. The master took the talent from him and gave it to the one who had the 10 talents. That sound familiar? By doing so, everyone who had talents would be given more and would have an abundance. Whoever does not have even what he has will be taken from him. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. But at the same time, in Luke, Jesus said, when you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or rich neighbors, in case they may invite you in return and you would be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. So you can see that depending on which side you're on, you may pick one biblical reference to support your position, or you may pick another biblical reference to support your position. Both sides do that. Let's talk about the role of faith in charity and community work. As politicians, particularly those on the right wing, push for less government spending on social programs, they state that churches and charitable organizations will pick up the slack and provide benefits to those currently receiving Medicaid and unemployment benefits and others. But this results in problems with distribution, equality, discrimination, and adequacy, which will result in problems that are far more serious than the ones we have now. Imagine these different organizations trying to come up with a way to distribute their goods, whether it be food or money, out to individuals throughout their community and throughout other communities. Equality just would not happen. Use of the pulpit during presidential elections. Oh, I love this one. 2 items. First, churches often urge members of their congregation to vote certain ways on certain issues. For instance, John Hagee, anybody ever hear of him? John Hagee is pastor of San Antonio's Cornerstone Church, and he had invited then presidential candidate Newt Gingrich to speak at the church. Now, Hagee has very strong political feelings about the relationship that the United States has with Israel. And he wants his church members to vote for those candidates who support a strong U.S.-Israeli relationship. Of course, that may have been the reason that Newt Gingrich had to drop out. I don't know. But the Internal Revenue tax codes are very specific about what churches are allowed to do regarding political involvement. If you've never taken a look at that, I urge you to do so. Appearances by politicians and mentioning stances during church services violate the IRS tax codes. And there are a number of us who would love to see the preferential treatment, tax treatment that is given to churches taken away, largely because of this type of issue. In the interest of keeping remarks short so we have time to move on, let's do that, and I'll be around for questions certainly at the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jim. I would now like to ask Dr. Ajay Singh to approach the podium. Dr. Ajay Singh, Inderjeet Singh, he's a professor emeritus of anatomical sciences at NYU, New York University, and serves on the boards of the United Sikhs, the MBSK Foundation, and is a fellow board member of also the Sikh Research Institute. He also serves on the editorial boards of Sikh magazines based in India, in Calcutta and New Delhi, Sikh Review and Nishan. He has authored 4 collections of essays on his journey as a Sikh in North America. And he is a columnist for several online Sikh sites. He is an instructor here at our Siddiq program, and we ask him to share his thoughts from the Sikh perspective. Briefly, please.
I said that because I reinforced the brief part, but that's what I would like to do. You know, when Sarah assigned this topic, I wondered if she meant for us to occupy San Antonio today, as we seem to have done. This occupy, faith, economy, and politics is a heady mix and often explosive. And I won't touch that part too much. But these matters won't leave us alone, nor should we ignore them. They impact us every day. In our political economy, if I may make a combination of two things, and political geography exist as academic disciplines. Politics and religions have shared common ground for the earliest beginnings, since no human activity is free of politics. The nexus between religion and the economy awaits serious academic attention, but even the most lax or silliest MBA programs are not free of ethical imperatives, particularly in these post-Bernie Madoff days. Now, politics, economy, and faith create a three-legged system as the defining structure of society. A three-legged stool provides optimal stability. Sikhism, too, offers you a base that defines a life rooted in a three-legged base, rooted in honest earning, and that earning that would make it economy, right? That's economy. Sharing of life's material rewards with others who need it, and when you consider how you're going to share, that brings in politics. And the pursuit of both of these, with an awareness of the ultimate reality that provides us all a universal connectivity, and that would be faith. So that's connected. Now, economy and opportunity are interdependent. That's why during the present election cycle, the debate is defined by the Tea Party on the right, the Occupy movement on the left. In a one-sentence summary, I would say that the Tea Party is driven by its suspicion of big government, the Occupy movement over this raison d'etre for it to its suspicions of big corporations. And history records many Occupy movements of people, land, treasure, sea lanes, even space. Also the struggles to occupy hearts and minds. And remember the days of Vietnam, a time to occupy university administrative buildings and shut down the system. Now it is to occupy Wall Street, churches, schools, government holdings, buildings, public works, public parks. But what is the Occupy movement about? Its paradigm emerges from a failure of what lies at the heart of the social compact between a society and its people. A just and progressive society aims to provide equality of opportunity, not of attainment. In the historic phrase, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, Pursuit is the key word. And Occupy movements reflect inequality in resources and opportunities, ultimately of power over our own lives. When politics is driven by economy, inequalities are inevitable. But how about when politics is driven by faith? Then religion-based states emerge that may be neither just nor inclusive. The Occupy movement is now global, from Wall Street in New York to the streets of Cairo, which seems unfocused, but is clearly aimed at the growing socio-economic inequalities. The largest corporations of global financial systems appear to benefit a small minority, undermining the social order. Hence the genesis of the defining slogan of the movement, "We are the 99%. It refers to the concentration of wealth in the top 1% compared to the remaining 99%, and that's you and me. But where economy is the driving force of a society, why should anyone react so angrily at the success of others, as Mitt Romney might ask if he had a chance, particularly when they're only 1%. So what is the big deal? Where's the beef? Note that the richest 1% of Americans tripled their after-tax income in the last decade. I needn't tell you how we, the 99%, fared. The degree and the extent of inequality are the issues here. Severe inequality robs us all of the opportunity, makes us unequal in the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness, and when 99% suffer, society as a whole is degraded. Now, we face two issues here. One, that religions speak to a sense of ethics as the foundational principles of society, and religions therefore need to work at social justice. Two, beware the ties between religion and political power in history. Remember the long, colorful, and bloody political religious issues, particularly of jihads and crusades. There's also the other side of the coin. Religions and their worldview have given us liberal, tolerant values and connected communities. Now, Sikhism occupied a historically defining place in these matters. It insists that the spiritual basis of a life must not be sundered from the temporal life lived here on earth. This is what we term the Miri Piri doctrine. The spiritual and the temporal are connected. It is true that religions do not thrive without entering the political dialogue, yet the founder gurus of Sikhism never looked to occupy political space, did not ever wage war to conquer territory, people, or property, even though there were opportunities aplenty when they could have carved out such space by arms or by diplomacy. Now, Sikhism unfailingly identified with the poor, dispossessed, and the downtrodden, those of low caste who had no place in the traditional Indian society, and women who often lived a precarious existence. Now, Sikhs arose from the fringes of society in northwest India. Historically, we might dub them the rock bottom of the 99% today, but Sikh teachings transformed them so that they became masters of Punjab, makers of their own destiny, almost the 1%. Now, Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikhism, celebrated and exalted the 99%. Said he that none is high or low, also that grace prevails where the poor are cared for. Jithe neech Somalian, Jithe nazar teri baksheesh. Guru Gobind Singh, the 10th Sikh master, credited these 99% for all of his achievements, and all the battles the Gurus fought for the right to be able to live with dignity and follow the different beat of their own distant drummer. When about half a century in the early 19th century, a Sikh, Ranjit Singh, ruled the vast territory of northwest India. His energies went to developing a secular rule of law where Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs were equal partners. And almost a century before him, Banda Singh Bahadur, the intrepid Sikh general, instituted the first land reforms ever seen in that part of the world. So today, how could then I, a Sikh, not identify with or celebrate the Occupy movements that promise to upend class distinctions, because that upending would be fundamental to Sikhism, and even I would celebrate it even if it is in text us today, given the politics, and even if it is over a cup of tea from a Tea Party loyalist. And I thank you.
Exactly on time. Dr. Ajay Singh was exactly on time, so his students know that he can finish his class on time. Thank you very much, Dr. Ajay Singh. We would like to request Omar Shakir to come onto the stage. Omar Shakir is resident imam at Masjid Bilal ibn Rabah in San Antonio, Texas, and employed by the Texas Department of Criminal Justice as a full-time imam. He is a regular participant, as he mentioned last week as well, in ecumenical services and interfaith dialogues, and has a strong relationship with the Sikh community here. We welcome Omar Shakir to share his thoughts.
I'm going to help you keep time. Beginning with God's name, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. We praise God and we thank him. He is the Lord, keeper, sustainer of all the worlds. We witness that God is one, and we witness that Muhammad is his slave servant and his messenger. To our MC this evening, to Sister Sarah and the rest of the organizers of this wonderful event, I appreciate you all inviting me back again to be with you all. It is my pleasure. I'm always received very warmly, and I appreciate that brotherhood. To the leadership of the institution, or the institute, to the other panelists, to my family, and I would like to greet the Muslim community with the greetings of Ramadan, blessed Ramadan, Ramadan Mubarak. And to all of you, I greet you in peace. God's peace be on you. When we approach this topic this evening, and it is a tall order to do in just a few minutes, at politics, economics, charity, etc. Somebody said occupation. As Muslims, we always look first to the guidance of God, and this is not a criticism on our nation, but we really don't separate church and state. God is, in his guidance, is at the head of everything. So we follow God's guidance and our Prophet Muhammad, upon him be peace, as we approach and look at all of these concerns and issues. We as Muslims believe that we have a responsibility to promote and work for fairness and justice. Almighty God says in the Muslim holy book, the Quran, seeking refuge with God from Satan, the rejected enemy, O you who believe, stand out firmly for justice as a witness to God, even as against yourselves or your parents or your kin, and whether it be against the rich or the poor, for God can best protect both. Follow not your hearts, correction, follow not the lust of your hearts, lest you swerve, and if you distort justice or decline to do justice, verily God is well acquainted with all that you do. So justice is a big part of our religion. God says another place in the Quran, be just, because justice is next to piety or righteousness. So as leaders, we want to keep this in mind. When we talk about the political scene and we hear all of the rhetoric, what do the politicians on both sides really represent? And when they make decisions, do they make those decisions with a sense of justice and fairness for all? Or do they just focus on their own constituents? So this is something that we want to call to mind because we're sensitive of this. As Muslims, we have a responsibility to our nation, even if it's not a Muslim nation. We're citizens of these United States. There should be a loyalty, there should be a respect. But the beauty of our nation is that you can disagree, and you can correct, and you can have a voice in this nation to hopefully bring everyone to the table as we collectively shape the destiny of our great nation. That was the wisdom of our founding fathers. So we have a responsibility. I believe that so many Muslims come to this nation and they stay here because they see opportunity and they see compatibility between Islamic democracy and Western democracy. Now, that's a clinic in itself. And what I just said is controversial among Muslims. But I know when I reflect on our nation and the things that it's about, when it talks about the sacredness of human life, the fact that we can elect our leaders, these are Islamic concepts. The sacredness of human life, and they have rights. I know the current media climate depicts Islam as extreme or that we don't have any rights. But I'm not speaking to the reality. I'm speaking to the ideal. And if we'll work collectively, the ideal will become the reality. For justice to take place in this world, we have to check our negative human possibilities. Human possibilities like greed, envy, inflated ego, and hatred of others, to name a few. We must care about each other, and we must keep the balance. I'm going to conclude by reading another verse in the Quran on this idea of balance and caring. God says in the Quran, seek by whatever means God has made available to you the eternal home, but don't neglect your share of this material world. It continues and says, and do good as God has been good to you, and seek not occasion for mischief in the land, for God loves not those who do mischief. There's so much in this verse. I would just like to highlight a couple things. Firstly, this is about balance. Too often you have religious people that renounce the world or give up the world and just go for the spirituality. And then you have materialists that denounce religion and just go for material. So there's a balance. Seek God's kingdom with your wealth, but don't forget your share of this material world. You have to live in this world. The interesting part about this verse, when you study the history or the commentary on this verse, God is speaking to a wealthy person, a rich man. And this, you would say, why is he asking him to get his share of this material world? He's already got more than his share. Well, that's the point. There's a tendency when we have to become greedy. So God says, get your share and only your share. But what else does this say to us? It's also an encouragement, an inspiration, an incentive to maybe the disenfranchised, maybe the poor, the down and out. It tells the down and out, the poor, the disenfranchised, guess what? You don't have to envy the rich. You too have a share in this material world. So go out and stake your claim. Go and get your share. So family, if we'll work for these things, if we'll work for human respect, I see these beautiful signs here, justice, peace, freedom, respect, love, all of these wonderful things. If we'll work for that, have mutual respect and go beyond tolerance, but work together for all humanity, for we all have a common origin. Peace to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Omar. I would like to invite Kylie John Clark up to the stage. Kylie leads meditation groups for the homeless in San Antonio through his organization, Homeless Meditation Practitioners Street Dharma. He is a senior student of Lama Tulku Tsori Rinpoche and is an ordained Ngakpa. I welcome you to the stage, Kylie, and please share your thoughts.
Thank you. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm tired of this racial profiling. As you can tell, everywhere I go, people look at me and they say, fat white redneck, he must be one of them Buddhists. Huh? I could be a Taoist or a Hindu or something, right? One of the panelists actually reminded me of a humorous story. When I was in India studying at my Lama's monastery, I had taken a break from the rigorous practices that we were doing, and I kind of slipped out in the woods for a while, out in the jungle area, and I just kind of stayed out there for about 9 hours by myself and just doing some meditation and some light reading. And I could hear children, and the way the monastery is set up, it's in a Tibetan refugee camp, but then on the outside of it, there's an Indian settlement. And I could hear these kids banging drums and laughing and singing these songs and stuff. And finally I was like, that's enough, I got to go see what this is all about. So I was barefooted, I'm walking up this trail, you know, stepping on rocks and just winding up this little mountainside there, and I could hear them, so I'm trying to follow the sound of these kids laughing and the drums, and they sounded so nice, and I hadn't seen anybody outside of the camp, you know, for several days. So I finally got out there on the road, and these kids, from the Indian school, they had made kind of like a parade, and they all had flags and drums and all this, and they were singing, and the teachers were walking with them. And I just started, you know, I finally went out on the road barefooted, you know, and I started applauding them. They turned around, they looked at me, and they dropped their drums. They stepped back, they dropped their flags, and the teachers were like trying to get them back together in line. And I was like, hey, you know, I love you. That sounded very good. And then I disappeared back in the woods, you know. So went back down the trail and found my little tree and got in the lotus position and did some more meditating. So when I got back to the camp, I talked to my Lama that night. I said, kind of strange, I heard some kids singing and playing the drums, and I went out there to see what they were doing, but when they saw me on the road, they turned around the bend, and there I was, like clapping, and he started dying laughing. He said, yes, might be very strange for them. Today they celebrate kicking the British out of their country. So, okay, well. So, Buddhism to me is, as far as I can tell from studying the first writings, Buddha didn't talk much about occupying anything. In fact, I think Buddha was mostly concerned about occupying the self. He said a very strange thing. He said that it seemed like when I became enlightened, the entire universe became enlightened with me. I didn't understand that for a long time. How is that? When he became enlightened, the entire universe became enlightened with me. It wasn't until much later, and you know, talking it over with my Lama, he said that the world's a mirror. If you're still seeing anger and hatred and aggression and war and pain and suffering, it's because those things still exist in you. You see in the world what's in your heart. So as a Buddhist, there's a daily struggle of plucking those arrows out of myself, become a better person, because how can I help the world if I don't help myself first? In fact, Buddha said, before you go out and make straight all the crooked places, first do the harder thing, straighten yourself. So as people came to Buddha and they started following him around, and he turned around, there's people, you know, wanting to hear his teachings. He pretty much said, come away from that ego structure, come out of the world. Come out of a system that's based on ego and greed and all these things. Take time and look at yourself, at your own heart. And so he created a sangha of followers that lived outside of the society, and yet they were connected to the society because they had to go once a day, every day, to beg their lunch. They begged 1 meal a day from the society, so they never got too far from society. And yet they were perfect examples. For the society, they would perform religious things. They would go and they would teach. They would help, and they would be role models for people that had given it all up, giving away the money and the car and the jewelry and the bling bling and the family and all that to seek what they felt was the most important thing, and that's the self. You see? So there's a story told of a disciple named Tisha who had gotten really ill, and he was a monk, and the other monks tried to help him until he started breaking down with lesions all over his body. He had these pussy sores all over his body, and they said, well, I guess we did all we can do. We better get out of here. Looks like Tisha ain't gonna make it. Sorry. When Buddha found out about it, he rushed down the hillside to where Tisha was, and he tried to pick him up himself, and the other monks ran and they helped him, and they carried Tisha to where Buddha was staying, and Buddha put some boiling water on, and he told the monks to give him some food, to give Tisha some water, and Buddha got some rags, and with that warm water he cleaned every one of those wounds. You know, it's like small acts of kindness with great love, right? The last story I want to tell you is there was these 3 priests, and they were discussing what happens when a deer dies. Does a deer reincarnate? Is there a heaven for animals? If there is it the same heaven that we people go to? Or when they reincarnate, is it a lower existence or is it a higher existence? So Buddha's walking by and they say, hey, Siddhartha, come here, we got to ask you a question. So Sid walked over there and they're like, hey, what happens when a deer dies? Does he go to heaven or something like that? And the reason we're asking you is because there's a deer laying over there with an arrow sticking out of its side, and I guess a hunter had shot it and he escaped from the hunter, and we happened by seeing him over there with that arrow, and so we got to thinking, you know, what happens to a deer when he dies? When Buddha turned around and he saw that deer, without a word he ran to that deer's side. He checked it out, he ran to the forest and got some leaves and some berries and some herbs. And he came back to that deer, gave it some water, pulled the arrow out, packed the wound with the leaves, bandaged the wound, and he carried that deer home. So we can sit around, we can philosophize all we want to. We can occupy Wall Street, we can occupy Washington, wherever you want to. But who's taking care of Atisha? Who's taking care of that deer?
Thank you very much. Last but not least, I would like to ask Waris J. Faridi to come up to the stage. Waris was born to Muslim Sufi parents in Pakistan and moved to the US in 1983. He had studied myriad mystical approaches to God, including esoteric Buddhism, Theosophy, Sufism, Vedanta, and the teachings of J. Krishnamurti, and the teachings of Satya Sai Baba. He currently holds the position of Vice President of the Satya Sai Baba Center in San Antonio, and we welcome him to the stage to share his thoughts.
To that, I'll share a secret that when I came here the last time, I really didn't know until quite in the end who I was representing. Whether it was Sufism, Buddhism that I had a lot of association with, Satya Sai Baba, or whether it was a separate Vedic group. Today I know a little better. When I'm asked in Pakistan, where I'm not so quick to reveal my Vedic associations, who I am, what's my religion, I say I'm a universalist Muslim. And they ask me what that is, and I said, well, it's a new thing. It's God's it's God's fresh experiment, and if it's successful, He's going to send 300 million more. And I see the signs of this experiment really growing globally, and I see more and more universalist Muslims, and I guess that's part of God's plan. I really believe that religions that grow in an exclusive way was also part of God's plan. And when the time has come, for them to be universal, that's also part of God's plan. And if I say I'm universalist of any religion, I could be I'm a Vedic person, because that's basically what it is. I have grown inside Islam, and I know the incredible beauty of it. And a lot of what's seen about Islam is really an image, and a lot of it has to do with projection from the media and all that. If you go to YouTube and hear stories of people that were converts to Islam, most of them became Muslim while they were traveling and lived simply with very common Muslim people and really felt inwardly the beauty of Islam. It is true when it is said that after 9/11 there was the greatest number of converts. It's because people were forced to look at Islam and ended up finding more about Islam and the beauty of the faith, and therefore there were many converts. I mean, whether there was a past life association rekindling or whatever that was. This is the year of election, but it's also for me very important. 2012, I've been looking forward to this year for the last 20 years because it's the prophesied year of the Mayan calendar when the old world ends and the new world begins. Now, it means many things to many people, but I have met people from all diverse spiritual groups saying the same thing. I have met very simple Sufis that had no knowledge of the shift or all the common language of the shift, the talk about the shift, saying there's an imminent, very great change coming. Satya Sai Baba talked about it. So he was asked, is this? We talked about the golden age. Is this same thing as what Christ talked about 1,000 years? And if it is, Kali Yuga hasn't ended yet. So how does this fit in, this 1,000 years of peace? And he explained that we're right in the midst of the Kali Yuga, and it's like the swing of a pendulum. It's coming and it's going to stop, and this light will flow in for 1,000 years, and then the Kali Yuga will begin on the higher turn of spiral. In my perception, in my meditations, a lot of what's this discontent and change that's coming is really to do with that. A real change that is coming. And for me, whether or not the Mayan calendar is true or not, our expectancy creates our reality. If such a vast number will start expecting a real and a positive change, that change will come. I remember that there was a similar date prophesied amongst the Mayan scriptures, and that was 17th August 1987. It was called the harmonic convergence. And a shift also did take place on a lesser level because of that, whether or not it was true or not, but the expectancy did create a shift. This time it is much more powerful, much more meaningful. Now, there's a talk about this year, the energy of the shift increasing more and more and more, and it'll reach some kind of a quantum effect, and that will start bringing a change in consciousness. And as far as all that is happening, as far as the economy, I feel so much that this has to do so much with the values changing. I mean, after all, what is economy except what the value we put on things? And if that undergoes a really sharp change, then the whole economy is going to change. And if it undergoes a complete change, then the old economy has to die for the new to be. If the old was based on greed, greed and power, then and the new economy is going to be based on sharing and love, then the old economy has to die for the new economy to be. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It may really be a very good thing. It's the same thing with everything else that's happening. The global Occupy movement, it's that unrest, the unrest with the old way of living, the way of power and greed. And so the term has been used, the change from the love of power to the power of love. And now what is the role of religion? And when I heard the words about the pulpit, I was thinking of Vivekananda, who is termed as one of the greatest Hindus perhaps since, or greatest Vedic minds since Shankaracharya. And incidentally, he said he saw the new world religion. He saw the new world religion as Islam body and Vedic mind. He said the two will come together as forming the new world religion. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's in his writings. But he came in the 1880s and gave a speech at the World Conference of Religions in Chicago. I think it was 1888. And just that one speech brought the whole Vedic thought with its living light into the minds and hearts of the West. And why was that? Because he lived with a teacher that was alive with the living spirit of that, and that was Paramahansa Ramakrishna Paramahansa. So to sum it up, if let's say the leaders of the great world religions were all here as panelists, and they were asked if there was one thing that was the answer to all these problems of economy, of politics, of education, everything, they would say that it would begin with a group of people going through a real transformation in their heart, that they would act as mirrors to the whole world. That's where transformation would begin. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Boris. And that concludes all of our panelists' thoughts that are being shared. It definitely, after listening, was definitely an interplay. We played with a lot of ideas of faith, economy, and politics. Now I would like to ask Harinder Singh. He's the Chief Programming Officer of the Sikh Research Institute, one of its founders as well. And he has a knack of bringing things together. So all of these different ideas that have been discussed, not only is he going to try and bring it together, he's also going to facilitate discussions, or questions, which I'm sure some of the audience will have with our panelists. So I ask Harinder Singh to join the stage.
Thank you. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh, and good evening. I was taking notes on each of the presenters and started out writing all the profound lines everyone's saying. At some point I stopped that and I said, let me present it differently. This is what I heard. I heard invocations which ranged from God to no God, from personal action to collective action, from materialism to spiritualism, keeping the talks relevant or escaping them, discussion on Godmen and the con artists, and sometimes from fact to fiction. And I'll talk about the Mayan one, for example. I actually recently visited Chichen Itza. It's not the end of the world, it's the end of an era. They have several eras. Similarly, Since 47 was brought up, incidentally, if you haven't figured it out, it is the 65th anniversary of not just India and Pakistan, but actually later day creation of Bangladesh in 71. And what we don't realize is that 65 years ago, fate of today's 1.7 billion people was decided by the British Empire, and they actually did that by calling something Transfer of Power Act. It was not Independence Act. And they left the power to the ruling elites of those countries. And if you look at it 65 years later, that has become the hot point in the world. So the 99% in South Asia, which are 2 out of every 7 people in this world, are living below miserable lives. Just look at the statistics from UNESCO, World Bank, and other places. So I don't know if that's the model we need to bring to the world. Another thing I heard was actually adding more things. So we have heard quotes from lots of different people and ideas and ideologies. If you look at the language of defiance today in the world, which speaks across continents, religions, as well as different cultures, it's the language of hip-hop. That's the language of defiance. And to quote my favorite hip-hop prophet, Chuck D, from Public Enemy, he's the one who said, before you learn how to fight, you got to fight for your right to fight. And that's where we are at the crossroads in America. I mean, we actually don't count. We are trying to figure out how to get a space where we can actually present our opinions. So, we are back to 80s maybe, what Chuck D, that somebody asked him what D stands for. He said D's for dangerous, because he was making people think. So I think that's where we are. We are in the home of the brave. We are involved in seemingly endless wars and the attendant abuses, including the financial crises and the economic malaise. And if this model has made world look less like the models to aspire, then we better shun these examples and figure out the new model for the 21st century. So our response must search within our religions, our ideologies, our cultures, and our intellectual histories for inspiration. Why are we running away from intellectual histories? For example, I would say to mostly the God or the God idea or the religious idea people who are sitting here, or philosophies, there's something to be learned from people who don't believe in God. And those who are not looking at the godly ideas, we need to look at the understandings of the godly ideas. For example, I was in London a few weeks ago, and St. Paul's Cathedral's one of the rectors was fired because we identified with the 99%. And within 2 days, then the Archbishop actually said we made a mistake. Church does need to identify with the poverty issues in England. So there are few seldom rare personalities in the religion who do speak up where they need to. So while we will appreciate Richard Dawkins as God for the non-religious, but among the religious there are other personalities who are trying to figure out what to do. So where you choose to donate your money, time, how you end up voting in November elections, whether you like the paraphrasing which Mr. Ryan did recently of Thomas Jefferson. It's very ironic, what he said in his inaugural speech was complete paraphrase of what Thomas Jefferson said. But here is the irony. Thomas Jefferson is the man who said it doesn't matter whether you believe in one God, 3 God, or no God. And that's the reminder we need today, that America is something which is an intersection of all these things. So how you end up voting in November, where you give your time and money, make sure it is benefiting those 99%. That's what we are agreeing to, more or less. And don't let Fox or MSNBC tell you that you don't have brains. Yeah? So let's exercise our own divine gifts, and at minimum, I'll just end with that we need to create Begumpura. There's a utopian ideal of Begumpura in Sikh tradition, which actually is ecumenical because it came from a low caste individual, so-called low caste in India, Bhagat Ravidas. And this is what he says. He says, you cannot have a place without sorrow unless you have 3 things. So this becomes a vision for how do you create a nice place to live. He says you can have that only if everyone has a right to exist with respect and dignity. Second thing you must have is that taxation must be fair, just, and progressive. And third thing is political stability is only possible if there are no second or third class citizens. That's the vision we need to work toward. And whether you believe in religion or not, we can all figure out our traditions and intellectual histories to work toward it. So may the Force, as a Star Wars fan, may the Force guide all of us, regardless of our personal protocols and personal priorities in life, how to really create that place without sorrow. So here is what we'll do quickly. We'll send a mic around. I've asked a volunteer. So if any of you have a question, please raise and the mic will come to you. We'll send 2 of the mics to the panelists. If you have a specific question for one of the panelists, you can direct it to them. If not, then I'll try to intermix it between them. So I'll make sure not every question is directed to only one person. Okay, so anyone with their hand up, can you please take the mic to them? One can go in public and the rest can stay, one can stay with the panelists. Go ahead. Can you take one mic there in the back? There's a hand up there. And my request is, if you can keep your question and comments to less than 30 seconds, and to responders, we'll say, can you do the same thing, except we'll give you double the time, 1 minute.
Can you hear me?
Is that turned on?
Yes.
Okay.
I was fascinated by the universalist Muslim talk, because I myself, as a Baha'i, as a sort of a universalist, and Lopita's comment about your behavior can make you a Hindu without ever having to convert. One of the things that I want to know about is, if you are really expecting a big change, a big shift, then what are we seeing that is going to be the replacement? We talk about a lot about fixing the current system, but we don't talk about how we're going to envision the replacement. And I wonder why people don't look at the Baha'i model as a possible replacement and look for places where that model disagrees with your faith and then start a dialogue. So I'm wondering, how can we shift the discussion from what's wrong to what is the model that we want to be the replacement, and work on that?
Sounds good. I take it you have a direction toward a particular person, or?
Just your response.
Okay, all right.
Okay, if we look at it from the really higher spiritual point of view, then the new must come out of something that has nothing to do with the old. You know, you have to first really wipe out the old, and then if you are in the state of higher creative spiritual state, then out of that you act in the moment in a very powerful way.
Okay.
And you can't project while you're still in, you know, which we're talking about a complete transformation. You can't project the new while you're still